Let me ask you something most men over 60 never say out loud. Have you noticed your belly getting harder, deeper, almost like it's growing from the inside out? Even if you're not eating that much more than before. Most men think this is just aging, slower metabolism, part of getting older. But here's the truth. That deep belly isn't regular fat. It's visceral fat, and it behaves very differently inside a man's body. I'm Dr. James Foster, and I've worked with thousands of men over 50 who thought this stubborn belly was permanent until they understood what was actually causing it. Before we start, tell me in the comments, what age did you first notice your belly changing? Most men look at their belly and think it's just extra weight. Maybe a few years of less activity. Maybe a little too much good food. And at first glance, it looks like the same fat you might see on your arms or hips. Soft, visible, and mostly cosmetic. But for many men over 50, especially after 60, that thicker, harder belly isn't the same kind of fat at all. What you're often seeing is something called visceral fat. And this is where things become more serious. Visceral fat doesn't sit just under the skin. It forms deep inside the abdomen, wrapping itself around vital organs like the liver, pancreas, and intestines. From the outside, it creates that firm, almost tight belly many men notice when they look down in the mirror. Biologically, visceral fat behaves very differently from regular body fat. It's metabolically active, which means it constantly releases inflammatory chemicals and hormonal signals into the bloodstream. Over time, this interferes with insulin sensitivity, reduces healthy testosterone production, and quietly slows the metabolism. That's one reason many men over 50 say something like, "I'm eating the same as I always did, but the weight keeps building in my stomach." I remember a patient in his mid-60s who once told me, "Doctor, my arms and legs are thinner than ever, but my stomach feels like it's growing from the inside." That description is actually very accurate. As testosterone gradually declines and muscle mass decreases, the body becomes more likely to store fat in the abdominal cavity rather than in safer areas under the skin. Another problem is circulation. Visceral fat presses around internal organs and blood vessels, which can affect blood flow and overall energy levels. Many men notice this as a gradual loss of stamina. You may feel more tired in the afternoon, workouts feel heavier, and recovery takes longer than it used to. Now here's where many men get frustrated. Traditional dieting often targets overall weight, but visceral fat responds differently. Cutting calories aggressively can even slow metabolism further, especially in men whose muscle mass is already declining after 50. What tends to work better is improving metabolic signals rather than just eating less. That means supporting circulation, stabilizing blood sugar, and protecting testosterone levels through small daily habits that guide the body back toward fat burning. One simple step you can start today is a 10-minute walk immediately after your largest meal of the day. It sounds almost too easy, but this short walk improves glucose control and helps the body direct energy into muscles instead of storing it deep in the abdomen. Small signals like that begin to shift how your body handles energy, circulation, and fat storage. And once those signals change, visceral fat often becomes far easier to reduce. But to understand why this belly fat accelerates so quickly after 60, you first need to see what's quietly happening to the male metabolism as the decades pass. Around the age of 50, and even more noticeably after 60, many men begin to notice something strange happening to their bodies. The scale might not change dramatically, yet the waistline slowly expands. Pants fit tighter around the stomach, even if your eating habits haven't changed much. It can feel confusing and sometimes frustrating, especially for men who have always considered themselves relatively active. The reason lies in a quiet biological shift that happens inside the male body with age. One of the biggest factors is testosterone. This hormone doesn't just influence sexual health or mood. It plays a powerful role in how your body stores fat, builds muscle, and manages energy. As men move into their 50s and 60s, testosterone naturally declines year by year. When that happens, the body becomes more likely to store fat around the abdomen instead of maintaining lean muscle. Muscle mass is another key part of the story. Muscle tissue burns energy even while you're resting. But after 50, men can lose a small percentage of muscle each year if they're not actively maintaining it. When muscle declines, metabolism slows down. That means calories that once fueled movement and strength can now be stored as fat, particularly visceral fat around the organs. Insulin sensitivity also begins to weaken with age. In simple terms, the body becomes less efficient at handling sugar in the bloodstream. Instead of being used for energy in muscles, that energy is more easily converted into stored fat deep inside the abdomen. This is one reason many men over 60 feel like their body suddenly changed its rules. I once worked with a 62-year-old patient who told me he still walked every morning and ate about the same foods he had eaten for decades, yet his belly kept growing. Once we focused on supporting muscle, improving circulation, and stabilizing blood sugar, his energy and waistline slowly began to shift again. One small habit that helps many men is adding short bursts of movement during the day. Even simple bodyweight exercises or brisk walking can stimulate muscle activity, improve blood flow, and signal the body to burn energy rather than store it. But there is another daily habit that quietly determines whether your metabolism burns fat efficiently or keeps storing it, and it often begins within the first hour after you wake up. By the time most men reach their late 50s or early 60s, they often start paying more attention to what they eat. Portions get smaller, sugary desserts might become occasional treats, and many believe they're already making good choices. But there's a hidden problem I see again and again with men over 50. Some of the most common foods in a typical daily routine quietly push the body towards storing visceral fat, especially around the abdomen. The first culprit is refined breakfast carbohydrates. Things like white toast, sweet cereals, or packaged pastries create a fast spike in blood sugar. When that spike happens, the body releases insulin to move that sugar out of the bloodstream. Over time, especially as insulin sensitivity declines with age, those repeated spikes encourage the body to store more fat deep in the abdominal area. Many men notice that mid-morning crash where energy suddenly drops. That's often the result of this blood sugar roller coaster. The second food category is sugary drinks and sweetened coffee habits. A lot of men believe the issue is just soda, but the real surprise is how often flavored coffees, bottled teas, or healthy fruit drinks contain large amounts of hidden sugar. These drinks enter the bloodstream quickly and trigger the same insulin response that encourages fat storage. One simple habit I often recommend is switching to black coffee or unsweetened tea and adding a small pinch of cinnamon. Cinnamon has been traditionally used to help stabilize blood sugar and can support better metabolic balance. The third common trigger is highly processed evening snacks. Chips, crackers, and packaged snack foods are easy to reach for when relaxing at night. But these foods combine refined carbohydrates with unhealthy fats, which can interfere with circulation and metabolism. Instead, a small handful of nuts, yogurt, or protein-rich foods provides steadier energy and supports testosterone balance in men over 50. Small adjustments like these send powerful signals to the body. They stabilize blood sugar, improve circulation, and help shift metabolism away from storing visceral fat. But there's another daily factor many men overlook entirely, and it happens during the final hours before you go to sleep. Many men over 60 believe the only way to burn belly fat is through intense workouts. Long sessions on treadmills, heavy lifting, or high-impact routines that leave the body exhausted. But here's the surprising truth I often explain to my patients. Not all exercise targets visceral fat effectively, and some forms of training can actually strain joints and discourage consistency, especially as the body ages. Visceral fat responds best to steady metabolic activity that improves circulation and insulin sensitivity. One of the most powerful and underrated tools for this is walking. But not just any walking. The way you walk, the timing, and the pace can dramatically influence how the body burns energy and manages fat storage. When you walk at a steady but purposeful pace, your muscles begin pulling glucose from the bloodstream to use as fuel. This reduces insulin spikes and gradually improves insulin sensitivity, which is one of the biggest drivers of visceral fat accumulation in men over 50. At the same time, circulation improves throughout the body. Blood flow increases to muscles, organs, and even hormone-producing glands that influence testosterone and energy levels. I remember a man in his late 60s who came to me frustrated because he had tried several gym routines but couldn't stick with them due to knee discomfort. We simplified his approach. Instead of intense workouts, I suggested a daily walking routine that lasted about 20 minutes with short bursts of faster walking every few minutes. Within a few months, he noticed his waistline slowly shrinking and his energy improving. The key strategy is something I call interval walking. Start with 5 minutes at a comfortable pace. Then increase your speed for about 1 minute, enough to slightly raise your breathing, but still allow conversation. After that minute, return to a relaxed pace for 2 minutes before repeating the cycle. This pattern gently stimulates metabolism, improves blood flow, and signals the body to use stored fat for energy. Over time, this type of walking becomes a powerful metabolic signal. It activates muscles, supports testosterone balance, and helps reduce the deep abdominal fat that traditional workouts often miss. But even if you move well during the day, there's another hidden factor that determines whether your body burns fat or stores it, and it begins during the final hours before bedtime. One of the biggest surprises for many men over 50 is realizing that fat loss is not decided only by what you do during the day. In fact, the body's fat-burning system becomes extremely active at night. Those hours when you're sleeping are when hormones regulate metabolism, repair tissues, and decide whether stored energy will be burned or held onto. And this is where one simple nighttime habit can make a dramatic difference. As men move into their 60s and 70s, the body becomes more sensitive to late-night signals. Eating large meals too close to bedtime keeps insulin elevated, which tells the body to store energy instead of burning fat. At the same time, poor sleep increases cortisol, the stress hormone that pushes the body to accumulate visceral fat around the organs. When cortisol rises and insulin remains high, the metabolism shifts into storage mode rather than fat-burning mode. This is why many men notice that their belly seems to grow even when they feel they're eating reasonably well. It isn't just what you eat. It's also when your body is asked to process it. Late dinners, heavy snacks, or constant screen stimulation late at night keep the nervous system alert and reduce the deep sleep cycles that support testosterone balance and metabolic repair. I once worked with a 68-year-old man who struggled with stubborn abdominal fat despite walking daily and eating balanced meals. When we looked closely at his routine, we noticed he regularly ate snacks while watching television late into the evening. By simply shifting his final meal earlier and allowing 3 hours between dinner and sleep, his body began responding differently. Within weeks, his energy improved, his sleep deepened, and his waistline slowly started to reduce. A powerful habit you can begin tonight is creating a simple 3-hour buffer before bed. Finish your final meal earlier, avoid heavy snacks, dim the lights, and allow your body to settle into a calm state. This supports better circulation, healthier testosterone rhythms, and a metabolic environment that encourages fat burning during sleep. And once you understand how these small daily signals influence your body, the entire strategy for reducing visceral fat begins to look very different. If there's one thing I want you to remember, it's this. Your body isn't broken. What many men over 60 experience isn't failure. It's simply a body that's been working with the wrong signals for too long. When you correct those signals, your morning routine, your movement, your food timing, the body often responds far better than most people expect. Even after 60, I've seen men in their late 60s and early 70s slowly shrink that deep abdominal fat and regain energy they thought was gone forever. And the truth is, you're not doing this alone. There are millions of men over 50 rebuilding their strength and vitality right now.